So I watched Thor, Love and Thunder, and I watched it. Did I think that it was as bad as the critics and reviews would suggest? Well, I am breaking my own rule against making film review videos, so I was obviously moved. He's been my favorite character in this recent phase of the MCU. At least the ones who got solo films. So yeah, I really wanted this film to be good. Let's talk about it. My rule against making film review videos is based on the fact that I'm a screenwriter. I'm a novice in the film streets, and I didn't want to mess with my karma by critiquing things that I know I can't currently do a better job of. But then I thought, Jeff Bezos is still a sociopath being rewarded by capitalism. Queen Lizzie outlived 3 of my grandparents, so karma obviously doesn't exist. So I'm just gonna talk about this film because I clearly need this. So welcome to my review of Thor, Love and Thunder. Just a quick disclaimer, I didn't get to film this at the time that I wanted to because there is load shedding in South Africa, so I didn't have electricity for my prime shooting hours. Literally every section is probably gonna have different lights. I'm not shooting this on another day. I'm going to throw a lot of shade in this video, but for some reason I feel the need to start with sympathy. Even though everyone involved in the making of this film will land squarely on their feet, they will get more work, they will be fine, I feel the need to bring some sympathy and empathy to the ruthless internet. So, I have sympathy/empathy for these writers for 2 reasons. The first one is writing is hard. It's hard, especially if you're writing a follow-up to something great that you did. That what's next pressure is high. I mean, I've experienced this on a small scale because I'm nobody, but I can't imagine on a global scale and like the entire world waiting for your next project. Not to mention having like 17 studio executives injecting their vision into the film, having to write in corporate sponsorship to a fantasy, and also having to write 5 ads for other films in your film. I acknowledge that must be difficult. And the second reason I sympathize with them is that we didn't need this film. Thor, his arc was wrapped up in a beautiful, gorgeous, lush bow. They took that character everywhere, and I don't think we needed this film. And this is very difficult for me to say as a fan, because there's obviously this immature side of me that wants endless Thor movies. Just give them all. Never stop making Thor movies. That character had incredible growth, and the studio wanting to push out more of these things for money. I think the screenwriters, because of all of that, had their work cut out for them. Okay, I'm done with the sympathy. Now I'm ready to start trashing on some films. To understand why I think this movie fell apart, let's just go through Thor's journey from the first movie up until this one. A little Thor rollback, if I may. So I threw my neck out rewatching Thor 1. Those Dutch angles paid for my physio's rent this month. I mean, it's a pretty standard origin story film. He starts out and his flaw is that he's arrogant and brash and just wants to fight for no reason. And he's banished to Earth, where he has to earn back the worthiness of wielding Mjolnir the hammer. When he's on Earth, that's where he meets Jane, but he leaves her at the end of the movie to go fight something. In Avengers, I can't really say much about his character growth there other than like having to fight his brother to protect Earth and learning to work with other people, I guess. Apparently, I watched Thor: The Dark World. I have no recollection of having done that, which tells me that it wasn't so great, really thanks to this channel that summarizes things. I do know that he loses things here. He loses his mother, who is protecting Jane, who is infected with the ether, and then he loses his brother, or at least he thinks he does, and then he turns down his dad's offer, Odin's offer to be king, and goes back to Earth to be with Jane. But Loki is obviously not dead. He's impersonating his father Odin. Cool. Shut. Avengers Age of Ultron. Oh my gosh, what a bore of a film. It was really just set up for Infinity War. One significant thing that did happen that's pertinent to Love and Thunder is that at some point all the heroes are like joshing around and each taking a turn trying to pick up Thor's hammer, which obviously only Thor can pick up. But Thor does notice that Cap is able to like move it a little bit, and he's like, whoa, hold on a second. And then we're on to Ragnarok, just hands down my favorite movie. Thor is really tested here. His father dies, and then Hela is unleashed, and she destroys Mjolnir. She just like shatters it into pieces, and then he's like thrown through space and lands on this random planet, and he has to find a way to escape. So he has to like get through to Bruce Banner, who's been Hulk for like a few years. And also this is where we meet Val, my girl Val, Tessa T. He convinces her to come back with him to Asgard, where they fight Hela. Instead of trying to fight Hela, he makes the decision to like let Hela and this other fire god monster duke it out and destroy each other and destroy Asgard. So he gets all the people of Asgard onto a spaceship and they leave. And he really reckons with this loss, has some bonding moments with Loki that I find really interesting here. And I guess they go on a space mission to find a new world to colonize. I assume in a friendlier way than the British did. And then we have Infinity War, where he loses his brother for real this time. Thanos kills him, and I think that's a big motivation for him to destroy Thanos. He gets the new weapon, Stormbreaker, which has the Bifrost that allows him to like move places. He's the one who gets the closest to defeating Thanos, but he fails. And then we have Endgame, the most recent one, where he goes from being depressed and having taken on the guilt of not having saved the world, really. He's like a depressed alcoholic and he's really going through it. And then when he travels back in time to get the Infinity Stones, he has this like really healing conversation with his mother, who reassures him of his worthiness. He's able to summon Mjolnir from 2013 or whatever, goes back with it, and then on the battlefield he's kind of like battling with two weapons. He has Stormbreaker, he has Mjolnir, but Captain America, being worthy or also worthy of wielding Mjolnir, actually ends up saving his life, and he celebrates it. And then it ends with him handing over the reins of being king to Val, because he's like, girl, I gotta find myself. I got like a lot of work to do. I gotta meditate, I gotta journal, you know. He goes off with the
As Guardians of the Galaxy back together again.
And that's where we ended off. Okay, now that we're all caught up, before we get into what I liked and didn't like about Thor Love and Thunder, let's just talk about the plot. From this point on, spoilers.
Hurrah!
Okay, so basically, Thor, Val, and Korg have to stop the villain Gorr, this guy who wants all the gods to die. He first wants to kill them with a necro sword, which is the only weapon that can kill a god. But when Thor asks Zeus for an army at an omnipotent city, they find out that Gorr actually wants to get to eternity, which is where any wish will get granted and wish for all the gods to die. But they have an extra fighter on the team. Who this? Surprise, it's Jane.
Who? Jane?
Jane has stage 4 cancer, and so Mjolnir calls to her, basically turns her into a hero, into the mighty Thor. But this whole promise of good health is basically an illusion tied to her actually holding the weapon, because it's somehow making her cancer worse. Anyway, Jane and Thor have a reunion, and at the end, their love inspires Gorr to wish for his daughter back instead. By the way, I have to comment on this. So Gorr's like, oh, I'm dying though, so if she comes back, she'll be alone. And then Jane is like, nah, don't worry, my man's here, is gonna take care of her. Which is, I guess, a cute sentiment, but like, I would be hella mad if my partner just like siphoned off somebody's child into my care. Especially someone who's like actively been trying to kill me. So then Jane dies and Gorr dies. So then this kid who mysteriously looks like Thor is adopted and raised by him, and together they are Love and Thunder. Okay, so on to chapter 1. What I liked. A. The cast is hot. We've already established that Chris Hemsworth is ripped in that obnoxiously grotesque way that is solely to impress other men and not at all something that women have asked for. He has a very nice face. Tessa T in power suits. I cannot get enough. Injected into my veins. Never stop. Please, yes, always. Natalie Portman has obviously been in the gym. You know, Mama's been doing her push-ups and her lifts and whatever else people do in the gym to get arms. And last but certainly not least, in the mid-credit scene, this was the only part of the movie that actually surprised me. Zeus is talking to his son, Hercules, about avenging him, and then they give the reverse shot on Hercules and he stands up and it's Brett mother effing Goldstein. I gagged, I screamed, I like audibly reacted. I had been lying down watching this film, and when this happened, I sat up And at that point, Marvel had me in the palm of their hands, and I just resent them for that. I will watch whatever it is. Whatever it is. Do you want my money now? You can take it, because you will have it. B, the cast is talented. Chris and Tessa T are actually funny. I know about the jokes per minute. We will get there in the next chapter, but they are actually two very charismatic, fantastic actors with great comedic timing. They carry a lot of the moments in this film. I think Christian Bale is a great Gore. I really liked him. In the beginning, he really played him as vulnerable and lowly, and then he played the villain and he had so much fun with it. I love seeing actors have fun with their characters. It's great, it's a good time. And then C, the Mjolnir VFX. I really enjoyed those. Every time it split off into its like pieces and then came back together, I got so much life. It really worked for me, so I really enjoyed that part. And lastly, I really liked the eternity scene. I thought it was really beautiful. I think I liked the locations in general. Yeah, I'm definitely painting with broad strokes here, but I really did like it. I think especially compared to the opening scene, it was kind of a great moment for the villain. Like, wow, started from the bottom, now you're here. You made it. You know, you got what you wanted. I just thought the colors were glorious. I'm a sucker for water reflections and clouds. It looked good, you know, so I gotta give them that. Cool, so now I'm done with what I liked. Let's go into chapter 2, what I disliked. 2A, the jokes per minute. This is an opinion that I couldn't actually avoid, even though I deliberately did not watch any other review videos before recording this. Yeah, there are too many jokes. It just makes the movie tonally messy. I get that Ragnarok was funny, and I get that that's what people were looking forward to for this next film, but Ragnarok was based on a solid plot that took risks, and the humor came from a place that felt quite motivated, and it didn't distract. It kind of enhanced it and made it fun. And I feel like in this film, the focus was on being funny first, and then the adventure plot, and then the characters. The humor really disappoints, especially when it distracts from the drama of the moment. There's this really fantastic moment where Chris really gives us everything, and you really see the change in his face of being so disillusioned by this hero that he's just met. Then there's a great shift, and I like the direction there, where Zeus is now like, he's gotten under his skin. And instead of being showy and quippy with his responses, he's gonna go up and face him and talk God to God, you know? And then he has that like lifting the tennis skirt moment that really took me out of it. It was great for the blooper reel, but it just undercut the genuine drama of that situation that up until that point was going so well. And then any intimidating thing he said afterwards, I was already checked out of it. So that was really disappointing. I didn't think they needed to throw in jokes at every single opportunity. It just came off as insecure. Oof, Modimo. The screaming goats. That being said, Chris really did carry it. Tessa really did carry it. They did their absolute best. I don't know who asked for these freaking goats. The only jokes moment that I liked was actually when they shut up.
Meeting people, they're a great conversation starter. Chapter
2B, the love story. An alternative title for this is The Characters, because that's really where it all went wrong. So the first foundational issue here is that Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman do not have chemistry, which is weird because he married someone who looks exactly like her. But I don't know, maybe I'm just confusing my white woman. In terms of casting, I know that as actors, there's nothing you can do about that, really. I understand for the first Thor, you know, Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston were not big names. I get how Hollywood blockbuster works. I know you need some star power in there. But it's 2022. Chris Hemsworth can absolutely 1000% get seats in a cinema. And not only that, just in terms of the character, they managed to develop and create so many wonderful, glorious story arcs for Thor that had nothing to do with romance. So I don't know why she is in this film. She's just not needed in this world. Okay, I take back what I said about not needing Jane in the movie. I think the movie just made me feel like that because she was so badly written into it. I actually think, especially given how much non-romantic change and growth they put him through in the previous 3 movies, the love story here would have actually been a great measure of that growth. Post-traumatic Thor, who's lost so many people close to him, who's figuring out who he is again, would have made for a really rich love story if they had given that part of the story the attention it deserved. How did a movie with 27 main characters give him a better character arc than his solo film? Anyway, back to the video. I think that the character work was really lacking here. Let's start with Thor. He is the titular character after all. I feel like they didn't know what they were doing with Thor in this film. They tried to establish what his flaw is at the beginning with no subtlety. They just tell us.
I keep everyone at arm's length.
They say that he has his walls up, but by the way he drags out the goodbye, he obviously doesn't have his walls up and he really cares about these people. Not only that, but that flaw has no effect on the plot. Him having his walls up supposedly does not have any consequences that would force him to change. Thor 1 was boring as shit, but at least it got that right. It got his flaw, it got him into trouble, and because of that he had to grow. And over here there's just no consequence, and that makes him feel like a side character in his own film, and that's weird. So because we don't know where he is character-wise, you throw in the love interest, and how is he supposed to react to her? All we get is like a gym bro who's jealous that like his ex-girlfriend can bench as much as he can. He seems more concerned with Mjolnir the ex than Jane the ex. I don't know why they made him such a shit leader as well. He tries to give a speech, like an encouraging speech, and he's ass at it, like it's so bad.
Scared. Afraid.
That was just really weird because he's been a fantastic leader. He was made to be a fantastic leader in the previous film, so I don't know what that's about. Anyway, so then we have Jane. Jane is an astrophysicist and now she has stage 4 cancer. And that is her character. There isn't much else going on. There isn't enough that they have set up to justify her taking up so much screen time. One of the reasons that this like mighty Thor, lady Thor thing feels so forced is that it doesn't feel earned. There's nothing that she does to prove herself worthy of Mjolnir. Her being worthy of Mjolnir seems to be based entirely on the fact that Thor loves her and she's sick. And not only that, she arrives miraculously off screen. This transformation happens. She arrives on the battlefield and she is a perfect Thor. She has no flaws. She just gets there and she knows exactly how to wield this weapon and fight in battle. She just knows how to do all of these things. So what use is there for Thor? What is he there for? And if that's what he's meant to figure out in this film, in the story, then explore that. Like, show him reckoning with feeling replaced, feeling jealous outside of just like the jokey competitiveness. Cool, so you take these two unfocused characters and you put them together and you have an awkward reunion with your ex. We get a pretty vague and shallow montage of their relationship that feels like out of nowhere. And I'm like, who is this for? Who's supposed to believe this? I don't know if this is just for people who are just now getting to their first Marvel movie. But I'm like, when did this happen? And then I had to like retrace and figure out that it was the post-credit scene of Thor Dark World where he went back to Jane. Like, what? Anyway, you have these two unfocused characters that you've put together. It's awkward, it's weird. And I get the sense that they don't like each other, they don't have any use for each other, and they've outgrown each other. There's no vulnerability. It's just quippy jokes that are quite empty and not coming from a real place and not realistic. I think if they were trying to show us another version of Thor, because they've gone so far with different versions of Thor, right? Make it Thor trying to be in a relationship. I think that would have been very exciting instead of the montage. Maybe it's Thor juggling being in a relationship with a human and trying to save the world. I don't know. Or it's her also getting, I guess, earning Mjolnir and them being like a crime-fighting duo and maybe they have to go separate ways. I don't know, just something else. If bad chemistry, you can't do anything about not having chemistry with the fellow, with a co-star, but that can be saved by like relationship building scenes. I'm writing a love story right now, I'm writing an arc, and I'm constantly asking myself, what is it that makes these two perfect for each other and how can I communicate that to the audience? How does he improve her? How does he bring out something in her that only he can do? How did they get each other in ways that nobody else can? They don't do any of that. There's like so many ways they could have done it. Even if it was like in a mid-battle scene, Jane could save his ass. Like maybe, you know, something sneaks up on him and then she saves him and he's like, whoa. And then vice versa, you know? she could not see something and then he saves her and she's like, oh my gosh, thank you. And then that can tell us that they're in sync and they need each other and they should be together. Also, the problem with making her an immediately perfect Thor, it misses out on any potential vulnerability that she could have. The only vulnerability is the human self that has cancer, and that's not something he can do anything about. But this version that maybe is developing her Thor powers, and maybe she doesn't know all the powers, the things that she can do with the weapon, or doesn't realize how strong she is, and he shows her that could be a moment for them to bond. You know, maybe he could feel weird about it at first, and then it's like, hey, she's really cute, and oh, this is really nice, and maybe we can be together now because we're both powerful, invincible gods. I don't know. Like that one scene, for example.
What about if I had like a cool catchphrase, like, eat this hammer?
Yeah, it wasn't funny, but it definitely could have been endearing. It could have been something that she does that's kind of goofy, and maybe she's shy about it. Like maybe she's like, okay, I should have a catchphrase, but I don't really know what about this. And then he could be like, oh my gosh, no, I'm not. Like there's so many opportunities and ways that they could have manufactured cuteness in the writing, but instead she does that, and then he's like, Jim bro, like, oh, it's fine, here's mine.
It took me a long time to perfect it. You'll get there.
And it's like, so unromantic. Like,
What?
also, very weird how Jane has absolutely no sympathy for how weird it must be for Thor to see someone with his exact powers and it's his ex. If I walk onto a soccer field and I'm, I don't know, practicing with a friend of mine whose like entire identity is that she's a soccer player and I'm automatically as good as she is out of nowhere, I would feel super weird about it. I'd have some sympathy and like empathy of how weird that must be for the friend and like make sure like I'm not stepping on your toes or like something. But she has no acknowledgement. She could reassure him. That could be a bonding point. But she's just like, yeah, anyway, I guess this happened. So weird, right? What a psychopath. I'm done at this point now. And then the final reason is that this film has a safety factor of 1,000. If memory serves me right from this engineering degree that I never used but always mention, when you put a safety factor into design, you kind of like add extra strength to it, just so that if in a once-in-a-lifetime thing happens and there's 60,000 more people on this bridge than you've designed for, it will still stand. It will still be fine. Wait, hold on. Let me just check. Okay, cool. I got it. I still know things. They did that with like every aspect of the film. They were just so safe. And it was boring. It was a bridge for nobody. There are a few ways that they are being safe in this film. The first one is sexuality. They do this very cute thing, Disney, Marvel, I don't know, pop culture blockbusters, where they want to give the idea that they are really woke and queer storylines and queer characters are just so normal and yeah, it's all cool, whatever, kumbaya, we're a safe, accepting space. But they don't explore that. It's so cowardly. I noticed that in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, when the girl has her two moms that she lost, and like, they could have just easily been replaced with guardians or aunties just to like sell to Chinese markets and not stress out the conservative moms in Texas or whatever. Every time in this film they mention a queer storyline that we're never actually gonna see on screen, I feel like I'm getting an email from a multi-billion-dollar corporation during Pride Month. It feels empty, it feels useless, and whatever you're selling, I am buying it. Like, stop it. You're clearly doing this for money and not out of a desire to actually tell queer stories. I'm just saying I see through it, and it does nothing to help the cause, because your story is so freaking weak and now you've like thrown in a queer storyline, they're gonna be like, you see, woke culture is ruining films. When it's like, nah, you just had weak writing. And in the spirit of this film, I'm gonna beat a dead horse with this next point. They over-designed for the humor as well by padding in so many jokes that you couldn't ignore the fact that this is meant to be funny. And in case you didn't find the last joke funny, here's another one, and here's another one, and how about this one? And do you find this funny? Is this a funny movie now? Is it funny like Ragnarok? The second way in which they're really, really safe, and this has definitely been discussed, I'm sure, in many film reviews, is that No one dies. There's no tension because I'm not worried about any of the characters being killed off because they're gonna come back in another movie. And this is something that I guess they've created in this Marvel Cinematic Universe and pigeonholed themselves in a way that none of the fights have any tension. The same way at the end of Infinity War, you're like, yeah, they're gonna come back. Like, maybe one person will die, but like, obviously they're gonna find a way to bring people back because they're not gonna kill off all that potential money. At no point in this film did I ever feel worried for Thor. I was quite surprised that Jane died, but it's fine because we saw her in a post-credits scene and she's probably gonna be in another film. And it just feels so for the kids. And I get it because I remember as a child the movie My Girl. Oh my gosh. That death, I still am not over it. But as a child, I had to learn that sometimes people die. And I turned out fine. I just have like mild depression and anxiety and ADHD possibly. And okay, I don't know that I'm like fine, but I don't know who they're making these movies for anymore. I think that's the issue, is that if they're just like, this is a kid's movie, that's fine. But if you're giving me Chris Hemsworth perfectly sculpted ass, I assume that this film is kind of for me. So all in all, I wouldn't actively discourage someone from watching the film, but I'm just saying that I was disappointed and I think that they didn't do the work on the character, and that's what would have saved the film. It's just having a focused Thor. But anyway, I'm done talking about this. Thank you so much for watching my review of Thor: Love and Thunder. This is my first film review video, so yeah, tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. I'm sure you'll tell me if you didn't like something. I'm so glad that I had this outlet. Thank you so much, YouTube and the internet, for existing. Thanks.